Go ahead.
Well, I mean, and of course, then we have the additional problem that with a lot of this money that, has apparently been created or spent or who knows what, we actually don't even know the exact recipients. And I'm sure you saw the video a couple months ago when there was a Democratic representative from Florida questioning the laughably titled Inspector General at the Fed. I mean, talk about an absurd title, Inspector General, like there's any inspecting going on. And he asked her, can you account for some of these trillions? I mean, we're just kind of wondering if you can just give us the exact recipients, who got what collateral was accepted. She didn't even understand the question. And one of the most, I think, rewarding moments, I mean, just really just joy-producing moments of my life in recent years is the realization that there are people out there who understand what's going on with the Fed, and that now it's almost like all the cool people are anti-Fed. I mean, now everybody wants to jump on
exactly.
Ron Paul's bandwagon.
Once the veneer of invincibility dissipates, and once Ron Paul started calling out Bernanke and Senator Sanders, I'm sure you've seen the clip where Sanders says to Bernanke, "Where's the money?" And Bernanke says, "I'm not going to tell you."
Yeah. I mean, it is, so I mean, as much as we, are inclined to fall into despair and think, well, everything's shot, it absolutely isn't, because there is a lot that an enraged populace can do, and if this crisis really continues to snowball and really barrels out of control, there's no group that can control an economy that totally collapses. Then it's anything can happen. It's a situation like that. But in the short run, people are starting to ask some good questions, and we might even get, or at least we might even get an audit of the Fed. And as Ron Paul puts it, no matter how that debate turns out, it is a victory, because if we get the audit, then great. But if they veto this bill, well, in a way, that's also good, because then that just encourages more suspicion. People are going to say, well, no, wait a minute. What are you hiding?
Exactly. No, that's even better. I mean, we're trying to pass it with everything we've got, but if they covered it up right as we get to the trunk that's stinking to high heaven, we're looking for the dead body, and the guy's got blood on his hands, I mean, yeah, exactly. Then everybody starts asking, why are you so secretive?
And meanwhile, to me, the amazing thing is, here we've got a supposedly free press. I'm sure you know all about this, but we've got a supposedly free press. They have a chance, the media, to interview Ben freaking Bernanke on 60 Minutes. So you'll think, oh, here will be some really great investigative journalism, right? Well, instead, the reporter walks into the Fed building, and he looks around, and he says, ooh, wow, they don't build buildings like this anymore. I mean, total lapdog, pathetic loser. And then instead of asking Bernanke, well, let's see, everything you've said has been wrong for the last 3 years. You told us there was no housing bubble, the mortgage market was great, things were going to turn around. Like, every single thing you've said is wrong, so why would we want to listen to you now? Instead, the questions were like, gee, what's your biggest concern? So it was like Katie Couric interviewing Hillary Clinton.
Oh, you care about us. Tell us how you're trying to save us.
What are you trying to do?
You need more power?
Yeah.
We've been bad?
That's what we get in what was once a free society. We get this type of thing where it is the media's role. All these journalists come out of the Pravda School of Journalism, and it's their job not to actually ask questions that would embarrass anybody or would be difficult for them to answer, but to ask questions that flatter them, make them look smart, make them look indispensable, so that we'll all just helplessly cling to these
Well, that's
people.
another issue. Obama cannot talk without his teleprompter. Look at you running 1,000,000 miles an hour. I am Ron Paul. All of us that love liberty, we can talk. We got our facts and history. And when you really talk to Bernanke and others, and I've been around them, I've confronted them and others, they are themselves these little tight, cards close to the chest. They won't answer any questions. I mean, it's really just a big stinking edifice that needs to come down.
Absolutely. And I mean, imagine now. Thankfully, there is alternative media that is, of course, popping up everywhere. That's wonderful. If we had in the mainstream media, if we had 1/10 of the investigative instinct, just think of how different a country would be.
But the private Federal Reserve funds all the big mega corporations that own the media and the military-industrial complex. So when 60 Minutes was literally guarding its financial emperor who it works for. So there is no impartiality there. And let's talk about the media bailout, where the government's going to fund the newspapers and TV. I mean, this is getting crazy. We're going to have our guest with us 5 minutes the next hour, so I can play a 2-minute clip, the clip he mentioned where the Solicitor General of the private Federal Reserve is asked where'd the trillions go, and she says, I don't know, which of course isn't true. But now we're openly not just seeing the government spend tens of billions a year for fake newscasts, buying reporters, these news packages that were secret. Now they're openly saying they're going to bail out the media. I mean, how about a bailout for the taxpayer, sir?
Well, exactly. I mean, particularly on this media question, how in the world could you possibly have a free media when they know they might have a chance to get a bailout? Who's going to want to criticize the government now if you know money could be coming if you shut up and toe the line? It's unbelievable that anyone could conceivably support this.
All right, I've asked all my questions. I know there's a lot of other points that are important. What are other areas? I mean, because you've got the evidence there and in your book of where they do things that make the economy worse.
Well, let me just first make a quick comment about the Inspector General of the Fed, the clip that you've got there. I think this, if you watch this woman, she genuinely, either she should win an Academy Award, or she genuinely doesn't understand this stuff. Whatever the case is, either she's a liar or ignorant, it shows an unbelievable contempt for the public. It really shows the Fed's total contempt that they would produce this woman who can't answer a single question or refuses to answer even the simplest sort of question. It's just astonishing. But my argument, one of my points in Meltdown, and incidentally, when we're on the media question, Meltdown has got a foreword by Ron Paul, the only person in 100 miles of Washington with any credibility on this. Is the New York Times bestseller for 10 weeks. The New York Times, my publisher tells me, has refused to review it, even though it is customary for them to review bestsellers. The book calls out the Fed and all this stuff. Anybody can get it, so they won't review it. The only other time they did review a book of mine was The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History, and I'm sure they realized that after they condemned it, everybody bought it. So needless to say, they can't mention it at all. But the New York Times, without some type of bailout, is clearly going down. I mean, they're going to need some type of bailout, and I hope it never comes. It couldn't be, it couldn't be more richly deserved. But one of my arguments, and it's not exclusive to me, is that the very existence of the Fed, the very fact that you have one, increases what we call moral hazard. In other words, it makes people do riskier things than they otherwise would do. And in particular, ever since especially the late 90s, when there was a hedge fund called Long-Term Capital Management. That's a bad name. You would not want this hedge fund managing your long-term capital. But anyway, Alan Greenspan bailed this thing out when things went sour.
Yeah, that was the mathematic geniuses that were invincible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so absolutely invincible, and then bang, the economy gave its verdict. Well, after he did that, of course, what did that make Lehman do? What did that make Merrill Lynch do?
Made him get 10 times more reckless.
Exactly. So, I mean, again, and then meanwhile, this is all blamed on the free market. No, we should blame it on the fact that we've got this monopolistic entity that is, and again, there is this sort of superstition that the Fed is there for the common person. Come on. It's there to bail out the big guys. That's why it's there.
Absolutely amazing. Final segment with our guest. We're going to come back, just play a minute or two of him asking her, and she's just bumbling around and can't answer anything. You'll hear a bunch of this weird corporate double speak about, is there a review of this? And that's coming up in 1 minute as we start the final hour. Stay with us. By the way, I have gotten so obsessed with the North Korea situation and Iran, and I forgot to get to our top story today like a fool the last 3 hours. The DOD training manual describes all protest, as low-level terrorism, and the Army's declassified documents that I am watched by the U.S. Army at my events, and so is Ron Paul. And Ron Paul just kind of nicely shrugs it off. But that's coming up. We have these In the Fed rallies, and they have Army intelligence there. New breaking mainstream news, we'll cover that. And we've got just a few minutes left with Tom Woods, TomWoods.com, the Ludwig von Mises Institute, best-selling author. But let's go ahead and play just a minute or two of this clip. This is the Selector General, the investigator of the Fed investigating itself, bumbling around here. The Inspector General has no jurisdiction over who the Fed's giving money to. In closing, Mr. Woods, your comments on what you just heard.
Well, when my wife showed this to me the other night, and I know there are a lot of us who would kill to have a wife who digs out anti-Fed videos, and I'm telling you, I got one. and when I heard this thing, I thought, this is the best video in favor of auditing the Fed I've ever seen. It's almost like, it's almost like I made it, and she's an actress. I mean, it is astonishing that, as I say, either she's ignorant or she is sinister, but this is the person they put out when they know we've got serious questions. Well, my view is the party is starting to end. It's been almost a century for the Fed, but people are starting to cotton on to it, and it has not happened a moment too soon for me.
So it's not going to live to 100. It's 97, 98 years old right now, and it's time to fell this rotten tree that's endangering the entire house.
I'd love to do it. I don't know if we'll do it in time for 100 years. I don't know when it'll happen, but I do think it will happen.
Well, I hope it's getting long in the tooth. This parasite needs to be removed from it's like a 2-pound tick on a 1-pound dog. Meltdown, a free market look at why the stock market collapsed, the economy tanked, the government bailouts will make things worse. I look forward to talking to you again, sir. Amazing interview, TomWoods.com. Tom, thanks for spending time with us.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Amazing having him on. Oh, very informative. So that's the answer to all you out there that think we need to have more government as the solution. Now, I agree with Tarpley. If we're going to have trillions spent, might as well give it to the people. But that's not going to happen. We'll be right back.